पूरा सिस्टम है टाइम को डिफाइन करने का वेस्टर्न कंट्रीज का, उसमें उनका मानना होता है कि टाइम जो है वो लीनियर है। हमारा मानना ये है ही नहीं कि टाइम लीनियर है, हमारा मानना है कि टाइम साइक्लिक है। मेरा ये भी मानना है कि समय गोल ही होगा। कारण हमारा मानना है कि पूरा मतलब पृथ्वी का पूरा जो वक्त है वो हमने 4 खंडों में बांट रखा है, जिसको हम युग कहते हैं। ये जो 4 युग है, जब कलयुग खत्म होगा तो प्रलय आएगा, सब कुछ डिस्ट्रॉय होगा और उसके बाद फिर से सतयुग शुरू होगा।
Is time really divided into 4 yugas that repeat in a cycle? Let's be honest and practical, no one has been here long enough to validate the theory of the 4 yugas. It remains just that, a theory. Ancient scriptures often provide answers for those who prefer quick explanations without much deep thinking. However, for those who like to question and explore, as the Kena Upanishad encourages, these answers are just surface level. They may satisfy curiosity, but they don't truly challenge or expand our understanding. If you're someone who values critical thinking, you know that real wisdom doesn't come from simply accepting what's easy. It comes from questioning, pushing boundaries, and seeking the deeper truths beyond the surface. Let's move on to the second clip.
So time is basically a catalyst. जैसे कोई केमिकल रिएक्शन होती है ना, उसमें कैटलिस्ट डालो तो केमिकल रिएक्शन हो जाती है। एक्टिविटीज के लिए जो कैटलिस्ट है दैट इज टाइम। अगर टाइम थम जाएगा तो एक्टिविटी थम जाएगी। सो टाइम जो है वो एक कैटलिस्ट की तरह कार्य करता है। साथ ही टाइम क्या भगवान की शक्ति भी है।
Is time really a catalyst for activities? And do activities truly freeze if time does? Well, we haven't seen any of these so far. In fact, time has nothing to do with the material world. Also, why do they always pull God into the picture when they are unable to answer something clearly? Anyways, let's move on. Honestly, I don't think either of these gentlemen has ever explained time in a way that at least makes sense. I had a similar conversation with a 15-year-old curious boy, and when I gave him the usual answers, he laughed in my face. He was expecting something that would actually make him think, something that could challenge his curiosity. And that moment is what inspired me to make this video, because if we can't give our younger generation answers that stimulate their intellect, then what are we really offering them? In this video, we are going to dive deep into the concept of time. So, let's kick off this journey with a series of questions that will ignite your curiosity. And by the end, we'll wrap it up with a discussion that just might change the way you think about time altogether. Here is our first question in the list. Is time linear or cyclic? Here is an example that might help explore time as both linear and cyclic. For each of us, time seems linear. We are born, we age, and eventually, we die. The straight line from birth to death is undeniable. But in contrast, in nature, I think we can say that the time follows cycles. When we think about the basic elements, such as potassium, phosphorus, calcium, as well as nitrogen and carbon dioxide, these elements return back to the environment, eventually becoming part of new life. This natural cycle repeats endlessly from the elements' point of view. Well, to be honest, I am still not satisfied with this concept because basic elements don't have the brain, hence the concept of time doesn't exist for them. Now this brings us to the next very important point, which is time a real entity or just a human invention? Many philosophers argue that time is a concept created by humans to bring order to our experiences. Take Immanuel Kant, for instance, who believed that time is not something that exists outside of us, but is rather a framework that our minds use to make sense of change. In his view, time doesn't exist as a standalone force, it's something we use to organize our perceptions of events. So, does time even exist beyond our consciousness of it? No, it doesn't. The concept of time dies with the brain. Okay then, let's move to the next question. Is time something that is shaped by the observer rather than something fixed in nature? French philosopher Henri Bergson described this difference as the contrast between mechanical time, which we measure by clocks, and lived time, which is our subjective experience of time passing. If time can feel fast or slow based on our experience, could it be that time itself is fluid and only takes shape depending on the person observing it? In this sense, time might be like water, shapeless, but taking the form of whatever contains it. So, does time actually exist independently, or is it something we create to make sense of our reality? From a scientific perspective, time is generally seen as linear. Albert Einstein's theory of modern physics, particularly in quantum mechanics, challenges the very nature of time. Could this mean that time is not strictly linear or circular, but something far more complex? So we explored beyond what the gentleman in the beginning had to offer us. Isn't this wonderful? Now, it's time to dive into the most important point of this video, as I promised earlier. Let's take those same questions we've been pondering and bring them to the Upanishads to see what wisdom they have to offer. Interestingly, the Upanishads don't talk about yugas or whether time is a catalyst, linear, or circular. Instead, they ask the real questions that matter. What are you doing with your time? How are you using it? What actions are you taking? Who are you spending your time with? Are you gaining knowledge by being around the right people? Are you making the most of the limited time you have? Are you learning and growing so your time becomes less miserable? The Upanishads are essentially telling us to stop wasting time on stories about how many years each yuga lasts or how 4 yugas make up a kalpa. These stories do nothing to improve your situation or your life. People like Akshat Gupta are more interested in telling you stories they've heard because it's easier to sell widely accepted concepts than to teach you to question deeply. It's time to shift our perspective and engage in more intellectual discussions that truly challenge the mind. That's all for today's video about time and teachings from Upanishads. Please like and share the video if you find this information useful. Thank you for joining.